Welcome to the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad. I'm your host, Chris Finn, and I'm excited today to have probably one of the most impactful people in my personal game, but also professionally. I'm honored to have this man here. He was one of the first, what I would call, famous teachers to actually talk to me way back in the day. We have David Orr. He's known as the putting genius. We get along great, just absolute nerds of the game and everything data. So David, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Chris. And it's great to be on this show. It's great to see your new building, your success. And obviously a lot of my clients are your clients as well. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's I always think back to the first times we met. I came down, I think you were over at Keith Hill's still at that point. We were on the putting green and jumped in the car. We went over to where you had the big studio with all the bricks signed. And like, I walked into that building and I was like, this is my brother from another mother on the golf side. The data, the research, and it just from there. For those of you who don't know David, I mean, you've worked with some of the biggest names working with some of the biggest names in the game when it comes to the flat stick. And, I'm excited today to kind of dive into a lot of that and a lot of some of the new research we were just talking about that you're looking at. People don't think about body and physical when they think about putting. And I think you think that they should be. And from our conversations, it sounds like they really should, right?
Well, I mean, what's interesting about putting, obviously you have your basic skills of read, speed, line, and aim, right? Yep. Your basic skill set. But what's involved with putting is like coordination, like the ability to move, like to establish maybe some disassociation at address between the rib cage and the lower body. And can I move my rib cage separate from my pelvis? Or does my body move as a whole, right? Or associated, so to speak, right? So a lot of people don't think that way, right? That I've got, I might have long arms or short arms or long legs or short legs and long torso, short torso, all kinds of combinations that make us look different, but also move differently. And that would be kind of interesting because with putting, there is no one correct way to do it, if that makes sense from a technique standpoint, but there are better ways. And I would say that coordination, especially the fine motor coordination, is the separator between people that struggle being consistent versus people that can be extremely consistent, which we can go over that here in a second if you want to. When it comes to,
I would love to.
Yeah, will I be able to share my screen? I will.
We could. Yeah. Let me make sure you can share it, and we're recording the screen too. You should be able to. There you go.
Gotcha. Yeah. So we'll start with the 4 skills first, right? So one of the things that tour players are doing is they're reading greens everywhere they go in the world. Every week is a different green complex, maybe a different amount of shape in the greens, like we just saw with Pinehurst number 2. Those are crowned greens, right? So you can see on the telecast with the Bermuda grass, you can kind of see the ridge line where it's shiny one way, dull the other way. So crowned greens, that shape is a very difficult green to putt for any level golfer, right?
As we saw.
Yeah. Well, then also you get what are called saddles, which is the opposite of a crown. Which be like a spoon where it's going high, low, high. And if the holes are down in the bottom of the saddle, they're easier to putt.
Right. Yeah.
And then, have kind of planar greens where it's just sloped kind of uniformly from high to low.
Yeah.
And then we get to what the average golfer sees, which is kind of flat and level. So when they look at a green, the amateur golfer looks at the green as if it were flat and level, not flat and tilted, or crowned or saddled, right? Or tilted crowns, like what we saw at Piner. So the green complexes are much different and much more difficult. However, the condition of the greens are unbelievably good. And a lot of people, they saw Rory miss a couple short ones, but they were not reminded that he was 496 out of 496 up till that point.
Right.
From inside of 3 feet.
That's a pretty good streak.
Yeah, it is a very good streak. Matter of fact, I think last year 4 or 5 guys went all year, made 100% of them, right?
Wow. Yeah.
In that distance. But, you got to realize that the amount of stress in the moment, right? You got a 2-shot lead, right? You only got, you got a putt on 16 and 17, 18, basically got 3 holes to go.
Yeah.
And sometimes you start to anticipate, you might have seen his torso on the putt on 16, the torso kind of anticipated a little bit, which creates just a subtle little pull.
Right.
Right. So he pulls the putt on 16. So what do you think is going to happen on 18?
He's going to try to not pull it.
Try to not pull it on a left or right putt. And he actually hit the putt very thin.
Yeah.
The putter was lifting too quickly. And he kind of hit it a little bit above the equator-ish. And it was a mishit, basically, right? So, but, if you weren't in that stressful situation, that might not have taken place. So I would not mark it up to, something's got to be changed. It's just that in the moment, there might have been a little bit of being worried about the outcome as opposed to the process.
The process. And do you find, I always find just playing with amateurs and versus playing with pros, I always see a very big difference in how they approach. And you talked about understanding how to read the green, looking at the complex, the grain, the slope, and then also the moment too, right? I always joke when I play, we share some very high level students, and if I play with them and there's a putt on the 18th to win, their demeanor is very different than my buddy on 18 to not lose $5, right? He's more nervous than the other guy. So can you speak to, like, as an amateur going out to who wants to be a better putter, you mentioned the process. Is there a specific way to read the green, and then ultimately, how do they know, like, if they miss a putt, was it a bad read or was it a bad stroke?
We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
So green reading is the number one skill that the amateur golfer should get better at. It's also the easiest skill to learn and to get better at, especially with Aimpoint and now Tour Read app. Got 2 options to learn how to determine the break direction and the break amount. Getting back to what I said previously, the problem with the amateur golfer is they perceive the green as flatter than it is.
Right.
That's the problem, right? So I can tell you a funny story. I've been doing green reading since 2007. The original Aimpoint stuff that Mark Sweeney talked about long before Aimpoint Express came about. And what's interesting, I'd gone to a tour event earlier this year at Houston, and I'd gotten on the putting green, and something was, I just couldn't perceive the green. And I'm watching these balls curve like a ton. I'm working with Alex Smalley and taking a peek at Alex Noren. Those are the 2 guys that I've been working with this year.
Yeah. And
these balls are curving. And then when we got the digital level out, it's like 2% of slope that Alex Smalley was putting on. And I kind of had to go back to my basics of, okay, is the green flat and level? No, it looks flat and level, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's flat and tilted. Oh, okay, it's flat and tilted. So there's a high side and a low side. Yeah. And then I had to start looking, okay, he's putting up and over a crown. There's a low, high, low. And then the saddle is high, low, high. So I had to literally start looking for shapes, those shapes in the green. And then after about 20 minutes, like my eyes could see it. That makes sense. So
that's cool. Yeah.
It's hard to see something when you don't know what you're looking for.
Right.
Makes sense. But if you know I fell back on my training.
Yeah.
But even somebody at expert level, for that some reason, I couldn't see it when I first stepped on that green because I'd never been on that green.
Yeah. So people need to think of
shape.
Which way is it shape as opposed to whatever we normally think of as amateurs, which may be nothing.
The real skill is being able to recognize break direction and break amount. Okay. Break direction first. That's pretty easy based off the shape.
Yeah.
Right. It's pretty easy. You can kind of tell me what it's going to do, but the break amount depends on so many things. It depends on the speed of your ball. It depends on the speed of the green, the effective speed of the green. So even though these might be a 10, that's an average.
Right.
Whereas, downhill on 3% of slope, that might be at, I don't know, an effective step of 18 or 21. And then going back up the slope, it might only be a 7. So I think a lot of golfers think in terms of distance.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a 10-footer.
Yeah.
Well, you got a 10-footer uphill into the grain, which is playing like a 7, which is not much faster than your tee box.
Yeah.
And you're hitting a 10-foot downhill, which is kind of almost acting like not quite your hardwood floor. But I mean, it's golfers struggle with the change in the slope and the change in the speed of the green, if that makes sense.
And then we get mad when we leave it 5 feet short.
Well, it's funny because I'll be listening to two guys warming up on the practice green.
Yeah.
One guy's been hitting all uphill putts and the other guy's been hitting downhill putts. And the guy from the hitting downhill putts will say, man, these are faster than the club, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, everybody's got to interrupt our podcast. So the guy hitting downhill is like, man, these are faster than our club. And then the guy hitting uphill goes, what are you talking about? These things are slow. To listen to that dialogue going on between guys warming up, and it's like, dudes, you're on 3% slope. You
The
know what
opposite I mean? Directions.
Yeah, and you're one's putting uphill, one's putting downhill. They don't even realize it, right?
That's amazing.
So, but now getting into the real difference, and I'm going to kind of share my screen.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, the hardest skill in golf is starting the ball on the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, you actually have to have a very, very, very precise delivery of the club, specifically the club face.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to take a look at a tour player and how much he changes the club face from address to impact. Okay, so can you guys see these numbers?
Yeah,
pretty good there.
Yeah, we can see them. And if for those of you who are listening in your car right now, we're going to put all this in the show notes and everything, so you can actually see the recording at another time. But yeah, no, this is awesome for everyone who's watching this live right
now. So what we did was we hit a 10-foot putt on every angle to the slope. So if you imagine 6 o'clock is uphill, 12 o'clock is downhill, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So the 1.0 close, the first number there. This was Alex Smalley, PGA Tour player. He pulled the putt, just kind of went just slightly left. He pulled it 1 degree.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And then we went.
How big? Just to give context, how big of an impact is one? I know, like 1 degree change in a driver going like 120 miles an hour is massive. How big is a 1 degree change in putting?
Well, to me, a degree is a mile. How much would be a degree off in your spine?
Yeah.
Or a degree off in your hip, right? Yeah. Right. So it's a degree's a mile, right?
Yeah.
Now, so he would feel a 1 degree pull, right? Mm-hmm. Now the next putt was at 5 o'clock. It was 0.5 open, but it's a right to left putt, and he makes it because the club face is open just enough so that the ball starts a little bit higher and then comes into the hole of the slow pace. So it wasn't a perfect stroke, but the face was up the slope a little bit, right?
Right. Yeah.
Then he misses the next one at 4 o'clock at 0.1. So basically, he underread that putt.
Got it.
Made a good stroke, but underread it a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is he makes the next one at 3 o'clock. Again, the face 0.2.
Yeah.
These are like small numbers, tenths of a degree, right?
Yeah.
Then he makes a perfect stroke and misses it on the high side. So he overread it. He had a 0.0 club face. No face change between address and impact, right?
Wow.
And missed it, right?
Yeah.
And could have missed it because of speed, but he misread it because of the read, because I was there. I was the one giving him feedback and getting feedback.
Yeah.
0.3 open on the next putt at 2 o'clock. He made that one. The 0.4 at, I believe that's 1 o'clock. He missed that one. And then, so let's see. We got to get this right. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 12 o'clock, 0.4, missed it. Then he made the 0.0. So the read matched.
Got
The
it.
speed matched. The stroke that would be one perfect stroke out of 6 putts.
Wow.
Okay, now what's interesting, we get over to the next page, 0.0 missed it. Okay, misread it just a little bit. Now this next one that has a green box around it, this was awesome. This is a left to right putt. And he makes the worst stroke of the day and center cuts it. So he basically pulled it, right? His worst stroke of the day basically pulled it into the hole. That makes sense?
Is that just because he had lined up incorrectly, but he missed it just enough to bring it back in?
We're built to survive, man.
Yeah.
Right? Brain's built to adapt and adjust, and our human nature resists change, right?
Yeah.
And he just pulled the living daylights out of it because he misread it, and it went. And that's why I put a green box out of it, because when we talked, I sent this data to him, and he said, "Just remember, your worst stroke was a make." So he's made one putt with a perfect stroke, and he's made another putt with his worst stroke. That makes sense?
That sounds like the game of golf to me.
It is the game of golf, right? And then you can see these left to right putts, 0.7 close, 0.8 close, and etc. Right? So, so what's interesting is these are really tight numbers, to be honest with you.
Yeah, right? Like what are those, like if an amateur goes and,
let's do the amateur.
Yeah, what does that look like?
Let's take a look at what that looks like. Now, this guy, as all the amateurs do when they come to see me, they tell me they're a 17. Right? They tell me that they're 17. It's like, right? Yeah. But what's interesting, this is the hardest skill, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay,
wow,
so
those numbers are wildly different.
yeah, hang on one second. Yeah. You don't need my, yeah, so this guy's a great guy. He's a 17 handicap. And what's funny is he says to me, I don't make my fair share of 5 to 10 foot putts. I'm like, well, let's measure you on some 10-foot putts.
Yeah.
So, the first putt, 2 degrees open, misses it to the right. 1.9 misses it to the right. Oh, we got one square. Missed it. Now, what's interesting is to watch his behavior. He starts aiming more to left and pushing it more right. Remember, these numbers are change of face. The face change from address to impact. Okay, so again, a little face change. Then all of a sudden, you can start to see it's getting 3 degrees open. So he's aiming more left and then leaving the face more open.
He's got one 5.3. Jeez.
Oh, we're getting there. You beat me to it.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So what's funny is then we get on the next page, and he misses one way left because he's aiming left and doesn't open the face. Right. And it's 0.4 close. So now he's scratching his head. He doesn't know if he's going to miss it left or miss it right.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So what's interesting is you look at the face change. It's, it got tighter for a moment, and then it's back to 3.4, then 0.8, 1.4, 4.1. Like if we go back to Alex Smalley's numbers, they didn't change that much.
No, the entire variable was less than 1.
Yeah. So this right here is why the amateur golfer struggles with putting.
It's because of just the lack of consistent. And is it because they have a poor feedback loop and what they think is right? They try to. Yeah. What is it?
Yeah. So great question. Feedback is huge, right?
Yeah.
But you have to measure it.
Right.
But you don't know if it's your face is open or closed. These people can't feel that.
Right.
Right. So you make them aware of it by using technology. And then they start to see the numbers. And then after a while they go, oh yeah, that did feel open. Oh yeah, that felt closed.
Right.
So what he's doing is changing his behavior on the slope. Misses a few right, then he starts aiming left, leaving the face more open.
Yeah. And then, I'm assuming the average amateur who gets on a quote unquote heater with the putter just kind of aims left and keeps it open just enough. And
it's luck. It's luck. So what's funny is I always use the analogy, if you and I went to Las Vegas and you had the skill set of counting cards,
Yep.
and I did not have the skill set of counting cards, who would be luckier? You would be.
Yeah.
So a tour player has the skill set of being able to read a green anywhere they go in the world.
Mm-hmm.
They have the ability to adjust to the speed in just a few putts. They are as tight. Let's go ahead and pull Alex Smalley back up here again. Just one of his numbers, right? Side by side. So our folks can see the difference in phase change. Right. So
it's literally 80% less variation.
Yeah. I mean, so this is now, let's talk about how to get the amateur golfer better fast.
Yeah, let's do that.
So you got to realize Alex Smalley hits in his warm up, he hits 20 putts down a chalk line. I can tell you right off the bat, that's going to get you within a degree and a half.
Hmm.
He also sets up with a putting mat that has a perpendicular for the face. So if you have a perpendicular with the face and you're starting the ball on the chalk line or laser line,
yep.
You have that perpendicular, you're going to reduce this phase change significantly very quickly. Now, what if we throw technology on there for feedback?
Now you
can get it under a half a degree.
Yeah.
But you have to know what those feels are and what those sensations are. And what's funny is that the amateur golfers that I have been working with, especially as their level gets better, like they go from say somebody that's a 17, like this one guy, right? And then you get to a 5 handicap and then down to a 0 or a +2, or somebody that's played in college, Division 3 versus playing Division 1.
Yeah.
Right? As their level gets, the numbers get tighter. And this is why coordination, fine motor coordination with a stick and a ball, hockey players tend to do good. There's no line on the puck and there's no line on the hockey blade. Write that down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But yet, how precise are they with the stick and the puck? Right?
Very.
Lacrosse players, right? Tennis players, stick and ball sports. That is, I have found that people that have played stick and ball sports do well with putting. People that have not done well, that don't do well, did not play sports.
That makes sense. That tracks in terms of neurodevelopmental and everything from time they're a kid. Yeah.
You just beat me to it. So the brain's not developed enough to be coordinated enough or precise enough to be that precise. But what's the one thing I'm going to say is the but thing here. Ready? The amateur golfer can improve the fastest. It's just a matter of how you're training it and how you're learning it.
It's like the first time you and I met, and I said, "Well, David, your hip doesn't move, but the good news is there's a lot of upside."
Well, the good news is we can get to move, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sense, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So what's interesting is just getting on the putting green more than you are right now. Like if you're getting on the putting green for only 30 minutes a week, I think your expectations need to be changed compared to somebody that's getting on the putting green 5 hours a week.
Right.
Or like my tour players, 10 hours a week. Or like my best putters that I work with, 15 hours a week. That makes sense? I try to hit 100 putts a day, 100 reps a day, and I track them all. Some days it's 200. That's when the old psoas gets real nice and tight, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about posture in a minute, aren't we? But, but the average golfer, so learning to read a green should be their number one and easiest skill to develop. Number two, recognizing that, I have a 10-footer uphill versus 10-footer downhill. It's not the distance that they're struggling with, it's the speed that they're struggling with. And then why don't I make my fair share of putts as well? Look at the tour player on the left and look at the amateur golfer on the right. I mean, that's a 17, dude.
Yeah.
That's a 17 right there.
80% more variance. That's wild.
I don't know how you came up with that, but it does look that crazy, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, you got basically 0 to 5 and 0 to 1. And so you got a variance of 1 versus 5. I mean, that's That's everyone who's not.
Yeah.
If you're just listening to this, you need to pull over and watch this. Click the link and watch this because this is wild.
This is not to say that the 17 handicapper doesn't make any putts occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to get back to what his statement was and what his expectations were. I'm not making my fair share. Like he's entitled
Yeah.
to make more.
Yeah.
Right? It's like me going to Las Vegas with you and going, Chris, I didn't make my fair share of money back.
Vegas didn't give us our share of winnings, David.
They did not. You know what I mean? But you got more than I did. I lost everything, and at least you brought home enough money to eat, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So this was pretty cool. I wanted to just show this because I don't think the average amateur really understands what it takes. Because putting is supposed to be the simplest part of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then, okay, if putting is the simplest part of the game, wouldn't the vast majority of golfers be really good at it?
You would think. Yeah, you would think.
Well, why aren't they?
I think it goes to everything that you said. I mean, just the pattern recognition of the greens. I would argue, and correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, do most golfers that come to see you amateurs even know like what a zero break line is? Or
no,
like how to find it?
Well, it's just a straight putt down and straight putt up.
Right.
And that can be the same as the fall line, and it can also not be if there's a shape. Right.
Yep.
But if you have this, right, pretty planar, the fall line and the zero break line are pretty much almost on top of each other. But just understanding the direction of the slope. I mean, I'm a skier, and that's like the number one fundamental is getting your skis into the fall line and carving back out. So it's skiers have been judging slope a lot longer than golfers have. I can tell you that.
For sure. And at a much faster speed too.
Absolutely. So I think for our listener out there, you've got to develop your green reading skills, number one. Number two, you've got to adapt quicker to the speed of the greens. It's not just your distance, it's the distance and slope and the effective speed of the green and then your ball speed, right? And then starting the ball line and chalk lines for outdoors, laser lines for indoors. And if you can get some type of perpendicular alignment, that will help you with reducing the phase change between where you're aimed and where it is at impact. And that's what those charts were, is how much does the tour player change the face? Now, you can do this, okay? Brad Faxon is always closing the face about 0.7, 0.6, 0.6, 0.6, 0.1, 0.4, but it's always closing, right?
Yeah.
And his path is maybe a half a degree from the inside.
Okay.
But his stuff is well organized, right? What goes with a closing face is a path that's slightly right.
Right.
So that's why his stroke is so elite.
Yeah.
But it's tight. The variance is very tight, right?
So is that something would that be fair to say that you see that great putters have tight variances, but potentially different strokes based on their body and all of those sorts of things? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just kind of go there. Okay. So Chris, let's talk about the body. Everybody's body is different. So one of the things that's been fascinating for me for the last, 3 to 5 years. Well, I've been studying the body for 10 years or 12 years, with the GBD, measuring I've shown you some of the data.
100%. Yeah. Yep.
We've got Faxon and Rory and Hunter Mahan and Justin Rose and Suzanne Pedersen and like all these top players, and what they all do it differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why they do it differently is they're built differently. So let's just kind of talk about what would be some basic body builds that you're seeing that you guys obviously do that, don't you? You measure limb lengths and.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You got some people that, obviously you have your three basic types of body types, right? Your endomorphs, your ectomorphs, your mesomorphs. But then within those, you're going to have some people that have really long arms. Some people have really short arms. Some people have big bellies that get in the way. There's lots of different. Yeah, you have some people who just don't have any mobility at all. They're locked in internal rotation in their shoulders. Like I played in the North Carolina Am the other week with a guy who was 6'8" and couldn't have weighed more than 140 pounds. He was super tall and skinny, and like, so he's clearly like, so there's, to your point, there's lots of different body types out there that you're going to run into.
Yeah, that's why we look different,
Yeah.
right? So that's why the stroke looks different. So you take that tall 6'8" guy, their shoulder joint can be much more externally rotated. The arm can be like like they can go into hyperextension at the elbow,
Yeah.
pronate the forearm, and their arms look really straight when they putt.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Then you take the guy that, you know, the former football player when he was in college, and now he's 55, and you know, he's like literally like, you know, and his elbows and everything look like this, right? And
Yeah,
he's got
like
this
he's hugging a barrel. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, one of the things that I've learned is not to fight somebody's body type, but to use it. So if you go on my Facebook and you see before and afters, I'm considering torso length, not just length of legs, but length of femur versus tibia, tib fib.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the humerus length versus the forearm length, also the hand, the fingers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also looking at the feet, the Q angle of the femur.
Yeah.
And I'm also, or the O angle, and I'm looking at the feet. Are they pronated, supinated? What part of their arch do they tend to stand on? And then the shoes. I made a funny post. I had this kid, and I put him in pressure insoles. So I've got what's called ballon pressure insoles that I can put in. It's like a walking around pressure mat, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And his center pressure was extremely towards his toes. And he was in major dorsiflexion with the ankle, knee flexion.
Mm-hmm.
And just everything was so far forward. And what's funny is he had a heel stack. He had one of those G4s with the high heel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like so, standing on this ramp.
Yeah.
Right? It literally moves you more forward.
It's like wearing high heels. Yeah.
No, he was wearing high heels. So
yeah.
My first question, people think I'm crazy when I start asking about putter fitting, is like, are those the shoes that you're going to use when you practice and play? Because the length of the putter that I put at is going to be determined by that. Mm-hmm. How stacked off the ground are you?
Right.
Because you ever notice when you take your shoes off, your putter's really long?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you get those new G4s and putter feels
now the putter's really short. Yeah.
You got to go put an extension in it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the first question I ask is, you know, what, so I'm doing a complete body assessment. You know, what's interesting is not just eye preference, eye dominance, eye preference, but, you know, some people might have a motor preference in a shoulder joint, right? So I'm lead shoulder pref, trail shoulder, right? Balanced. You know, going down through all the joints and looking what their preference of movement is. Because one of the things that I've learned is that what's the engine of your stroke? Well, everybody says my shoulders, but yet you look at the data and almost everybody has some arm movements and elbow movements and some wrist movements, even though they're small.
Yeah.
They have some, right? So that's part of the coordination. Is the putter is the third arm. So then my fingers and hands and wrists, and then my forearms and elbows and etc. all the way up to the chain. I tend to putt with my shoulders, the prime engine, but that doesn't mean I don't have any coordination going on where?
Yeah, here. Hands, fingers. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly. So for our viewers, if somebody had a long torso and say short legs,
mm-hmm.
I see a lot of hip hinge. I see, I wish I had short legs because my center of mass would be closer to the ground, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting is somebody could have a long torso, short legs, and long arms, and they might be in a really short putter.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. They'd also be they'd be a great deadlifter.
Absolutely.
They wouldn't have to go very far off the ground.
Exactly.
Terrible bench presser, but great deadlifter.
Then you got yours truly, who's got extremely long legs, extremely long upper arms, and a very short waist. Like my wife is like 4 to 5 inches taller than I am sitting in a chair.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. So these are things that, have to be considered. So if you were to take me to do a hip hinge, I would immediately fall back on my heels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Immediately. I probably couldn't do a squat.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So these are the things that affect balance in putting. That makes sense. It also affects the position of your arms and your elbows and even your wrists and fingers and clubs. So a lot of people say, well, how putting's just so simple. Well, putting is simple if the surface was flat and level. If every
Every
putt
time.
was
Yeah.
if the putt was just distance and direction, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But what makes the putting stroke so unique is we're all built differently.
Right.
We're all so asymmetrical and
Yeah. And then, is that where then the putter, like changing upright versus a mallet versus like is that where all that starts to come into the equation of people understand what to use?
It can, especially when you view the putter as a third arm.
Yeah.
Right. That's how I look at it. My mentor, Mac O'Grady, said the golf club's a third arm.
Yeah.
So you can, putter fitting right now is kind of all over the place because people are using putter fitting as a means to sell putters, as opposed to there is no standard way to assess somebody's putting stroke and movement pattern with a putter. There's no standard way. Now there's some guys that are a lot smarter at it than other people.
Right.
But it's funny, I'll get people that walk in the door and go, yeah, I just got putter fit by was it Champion?
Club Champion? Yep.
Yeah, and they got on a Sam Putt Lab and they come in and I'm like, this putter is like too short. The grip's too big. Oh, by the way, your putter weighs about 600 grams total weight. And, Factor's putter's under 500. Tiger's putter's under 500. Stan Utley's putter's under 500 total grams. I'm not talking that total. That's shaft.
Wow, everything. Grip, everything, yeah.
Head weight, yeah. Stan Utley's under 500, and you're coming in here with 600. I hope you're swinging it like Bryson.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope the plane of it is really up and down, because that's one of the markers that the flatter the flatter the plane of the sweet spot, the flatter the face plane is, that's where the weight change is. I can be lighter if I'm flatter. If I'm more upright, I can be a sledgehammer.
Got it.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
A lot of people are putting with putters that are not fit for them.
Yeah. David, I can't thank you enough for coming on today. For all of you guys who are interested in getting more, hearing more of David's stuff, obviously the website, we'll put all the links there. On social media, you just at David Orr, or at Flatstick, what's the best place for people to find you?
So on Facebook, it's David Orr.
Okay. And what about Instagram or X or anything like that?
I think it's Flatstick Academy.
Okay, great.
Let me see here. I'll let you know. Yeah, it's Flatstick Academy. Or it's David Orr also. Hang on. David, let's see here. Yeah, I'm not really good with the social media stuff. I post most of my before and afters on my Facebook page.
Okay, good.
All right, so if people want to see the quality of the work, and if they want to see because I have a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour session. Okay.
Awesome.
Most of my clients are from out of state, out of country.
Yeah.
And they do a 2 hour or 3 hour session, right? If you're doing an hour, you're wasting your money. To be honest with you, don't even sign up. Like people, there's a reason why I'm $500 an hour for an hour, because you don't need to be taking an hour.
Yeah. I can attest. Yeah. And any of you guys that are interested in that, I mean, definitely it's well worth the time. And we always talk every week about, dropping knowledge bombs. Your head will be exploded by the amount of information you'll learn from David. And to me, the cool thing for me personally was how it was simple, actionable. It was like, how did I not know that? And it makes so much sense, and it's grounded in research, just like everything we do at Par for Success. And David, I can't thank you enough for coming on here, taking this time to chat with me and share all your knowledge with everybody. And it's been good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you, and I'm glad to see that your business is expanding and that you got your dream, your new building.
We've been very blessed. It's been quite a ride, and honored to have you along the way. So it's been awesome. So
Thank you so
Awesome.
much. I enjoyed
For sure.
your. Yep. Thank you. Yep.
For sure.
All
All
right.
right, guys, then check out the thanks as always for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you on the next episode.